Hello, my name is Josh Higgins, and I'm going to be doing my sped talk today on React using Create React app. So I'm creating a automated greenhouse, but I know I want a backend that's going to use the Python Flask library. And I want to do my front end with React, so I figured I would talk a little bit about what I've been looking into. So Create React app is really easy to use, and so I'm using a Node version manager. If you have the latest installed, you can do that however you please. But I believe some of the later versions of Node come default with npx, and then you can just run Create React app with whatever app you want. So that's what I did in this directory, and now we can kind of look into the code. So I know I wanted to use Bootstrap. So in the index.html, you can just throw in your scripts and your links like you normally would with HTML file. And then in my app.js, I know I wanted to use some routing. So in package.json, I installed a package called React Router DOM, which gives me access to some of those routing tools that I want. So back in app, you can see I import a browser router as router, route, and link. And then down here, I set that all up. Since app kind of controls your site, it's kind of where your routing should live. So if I link to / or home and the path matches, that it will render the home component. And the same for repos. So the home component is very simple right now. It's just rendering home. The repos component is a little more involved, so we can kind of look at what that's doing. You see it's pretty cool. It doesn't even need to refresh the page. It just loads the component for you. So in repos, it's a little more involved, as I said, but it's using the GitHub API. The reason for using the GitHub API, honestly, is just because it was a good example. It's free, and it offers you up to like 5,000 requests in a day, which is actually really nice for a free API that you can use, especially just for testing and messing around. So it does require a token. You can get that pretty easy as well from your GitHub page. That's obviously saved in a file. It doesn't need to be shown, but it's basically just a token that looks like some random string. So I use fetch to get that. You could install an additional library if you wanted. We can start looking at the code. So I export default class repos, which extends component. You could just set class repos extends component and then export default repos down here. But since I'm only exporting or using one component in this file, I can just do it all in one line up here. And then I set my constructor up here, which I set my state as well. So I know I want a user, so I can search a GitHub account, and I want a repo so I can save their repositories. So I have a component did update, so I can check if the state changes specifically for user. And if so, then I call this fetch repos. So with using ES6, I can use a fat arrow function instead of binding the function in the constructor, which I find to be a little nicer. And it looks to be preferred actually over the bind method. So when I do call fetch repos, what that does is it's an async call because I want it to wait. So I wait for the response from GitHub users, and then the user. I just grab from the state because I have it if this function is getting called. And then I wait for it to save to a JSON format, and then I save that to the state of repos. So I did setting state two ways, so you could kind of see how that's done. One being where the variable names are different, repos being what exists in the state, and then JSON what I want it to set to. But if the variable that you're setting is the same, using ES6 again, you can just use set state with the same variable name. You don't need to do like :user. You don't have to do that. It's pretty nice. And then in here, I use a little ternary magic. So I check if the length of repos is greater than 0. If so, I map over my response, and I create this card component. Else, essentially, I show that no users was found. So we can kind of see that in action here by searching a user. and we can see it loads some repositories that they have. Thanks.